Hey guys, what is going on? This is IROCTHS here, back with another episode of the tutorial series for Out of the Park 19 and the rebuild of the Rangers. So last episode I had found that I turned off owner goals by accident, and I said I would try to figure out how to turn them on, and I did do that. I am kind of sad with the owner goals I did get as a result, because as I was reset them, I lost a upgrade at second base owner goal, and now I have extend your player Cole Hamels instead. So this may be a little bit harder to accomplish all these goals. I may have to actually try to make the playoffs this year. So last episode we assigned our assistant GM to handle AI or minor league promotion and demotion, but we don't want that to happen with our best players. We don't want that to happen with our best prospects. We want to control that ourselves. So what we want to do instead is disable AI promotions. So what you're going to do is you're going to come in here, you're going to right click on their name, go down to transaction, and disable AI demotion promotion. And then for Willie Calhoun, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come in here. I actually don't need to get into the screen. I'm going to go over here, and I'm actually going to set game strategy and then force use at second base. This means he is going to start every game at second base, regardless of anything else. They're not going to do any kind of platooning with him. The reason I want to do that is I want to increase his position rating at second base. It's a 35 right now. I want it higher than that. I've got a really good left fielder, Joey Gallo, at the major league level. I don't necessarily have a great second baseman, so I want to improve that. I want to force them to use him there. I've also set Andy Ibanez, who was the second baseman, to force start at third base because, again, I want him to get that third base experience. So since these guys were at AAA, I'm force starting them. If you look at Julio Pablo Martinez, he was originally a center fielder. I switched him to left field to increase that rating. This is not because I want him to get a lot of experience there, but because I want him to... Actually, it is just because I wanted him to get a lot of experience there. It's not because I necessarily need him over there. Again, I have Joey Gallo, but he's at Double-A, so filling out his left field position rating isn't a bad idea. I will probably at some point force start him in right field as well, just so he has some experience over there if I do need him to play right field. So I want to take a look at Michael DeLeon. He's at advanced A-ball in my system, and as you can see, he's got pretty decent ratings. He's got a pretty decent potential overall. Average contact, average eye discipline, and above average avoid Ks. Okay power, and pretty good defensive rating. So he looks like he wouldn't be necessarily a really solid everyday player. He is also a switch hitter, so he would make a pretty decent utility player is what I'm seeing here. However, I'm not adding him to the short list despite the fact that he looks really good, and I think he could be an okay player. The reason being his personality is DeLeon has no hustle. So what this means is that he is not going to put in the work. He has a low work ethic. That is going to hinder his development and his performance as he moves through the system. So I don't necessarily feel as bad letting the AI control him because I don't think he's ever going to fully live up to this potential, which should mean he's a borderline major leaguer at that point. Meanwhile, he does not... Meanwhile, you have Andy Ibanez. It doesn't have the accent over the E or the N, so I think it's Ibanez like the guitars. Ibanez never shows any lack of effort. So I know that he has at least good work ethic, if not an excellent work ethic. So he is going to put in the time. He's going to probably be more likely to reach all of these things a little bit better as well. So that is an example of something you want to look for, and that becomes more important when you're actually trying to decide what kind of players you want to sign or acquire in trades. Since these are players that are already in my system, that is why I am now looking at their personality. Normally I would do that before they entered the system, and I would seriously consider not putting them in the system if they have a lower work ethic. So let's start finally taking a look at players, and we're going to start with a player that's not on our team named Nick Pratto. Nick is a first base prospect in the Royal system, and as you can see, Nick is projected to be a fairly decent player all around, with his strongest tools being gap power and avoiding strikeouts. So we want to go to his batting stats and change the view to extended batting stats. The first three we're going to look at are BABIP or BABIP, his walk percentage, and his ISO. So starting with BABIP, which is batting average on balls in play. This is how often he gets a a hit when he actually makes contact with the ball. It takes strikeouts and walks out of the equation. The league average for both pitchers and hitters is always going to be 300. For hitters, above 300 is good and below 300 is not good. And it's the opposite for pitchers. They want a BABIP below 300. BABIP is one of the 3 ratings that contributes to the contact rating, along with avoid Ks and home run power. So if we do take a look at his BABIP, it is above average at 319. And with 230 plate appearances, that's probably not just good luck. That's a pretty decent sample size. We also want to take a look at his walk percentage, which directly translates to eye discipline ratings. He has a walk percentage of a little over 10%, which is fairly average. As far as his ISO is concerned, it's a little bit above average at 167, where average is about 140. Now, since ISO incorporates all extra base hits, you have to try to find a way to break it into home run power and gap power. And if you take a look at the number of doubles and triples he has compared to the number of home runs he has, it's pretty clear that his gap power is ahead of his home run power. So looking at all of these, I would say he might be an above average player, if only slightly. However, we do want to take a look at his strikeout percentage. His strikeout percentage is 25.2%. That is an exceedingly high strikeout rate, especially when you consider that's supposed to be his best rating. Even with that, I think he's still a borderline case, and there's a couple other statistics that can help us make a decision. I won't actually use these to scout ratings, but WOBA and WRC Plus do a pretty good job at telling you how a player is performing. WOBA is weighted on base average. It assigns a value to every potential outcome of a plate appearance and uses that to try to determine how much a player is contributing to run production. A normal league average WOBA would be about 320. So again, Pratto is slightly above average. The other one we're going to look at is WRC Plus. WRC Plus is actually partially derived from WOBA. It attempts to determine how much a player is contributing to run production while also adjusting for league and park factors, meaning it adjusts for how friendly a hitting environment is. It also attempts to compare all players to each other directly by placing an average player at 100. With a WRC Plus of 101, that's pretty good evidence that Pratto is just barely above average. Looking at all of this, I would say that his BABIP and gap power are above average, his eye is average, and his home run power and avoid Ks are below average, at least in regards to rookie level. Because his avoid K rating is so far below average, I would not want to promote him to start the year. Some extra time at the rookie level would help develop his home run power and his avoid K rating, and promoting him right now might actually cause him to regress. However, I would be willing to check back in 100 to 150 plate appearances to see if he's doing better this year. And if it doesn't look like his contact and walk ratings are slipping at all, plus his home run and avoid K rating are getting better, I'd be tempted to promote him pretty early on in the season. So now let's take a look at Willie Calhoun. Actually, take a look at one of our players, see what we've got here. So he's got above average or average tools across the board when it comes to batting. He's below average on pretty much everything over here except for sacrifice bunting, which is not what we're going to look for him for if you look at his other stats. And he's a below average defender. So he's gonna all be in the offense here. We're not really gonna look for any defense from him. He also says here he puts in the long hours, so that, as we already discussed, he has a pretty good work ethic. So hopefully he pans out. He's more likely to than someone like Michael DeLeon. So we're gonna go in here. We're gonna limit the. Let's start with looking at his major league stats. 37 plate appearances, very small sample size. Slash line is okay. That OPS is low. And if you go over to his expanded stats, you see really small ISO, especially for a player like that. WOBA of 301, BABIP of 308. Strikeout percentage of 18.9 is actually pretty good. But again, this is all in a very small sample size. Looks like he did okay, except a lot of the time he got on base with. So let's go to AAA to actually get an accurate representation of how he's doing. He is at AAA at Round Rock, so this is where he's most likely going to start the season, but let's see if he's actually overqualified for AAA and if we want to call him up. So you look at, this is all last season, this is just across 2 different teams, he was part of the trade. If you look at it here, he has 128 games, 534 plate appearances is amazing. So we know we've got pretty good results. First thing I'm going to look at is his BABIP, 289, 290, pretty close there. So a slightly below average batting average on balls in play, which isn't what we're looking for. And with the large sample size, it's not really a luck thing. This is probably fairly accurate. Then we look at his walk percentage of 7.9, which is well above average. If you look at his profile, he's got an average eye, so he's probably slightly above what you would expect for a AAA batter when it comes to his eye. So he's probably okay there. And the same with the strikeout rate of 11.4. For a slugger to have a strikeout percentage that low, and he does have, that is his best tool. This is a void case, so that is his best tool. That's pretty good. He looks like he's locked in from that angle, and then his ISO is at elite levels, 272. And if you look at his regular basic stats, he's got a pretty good mix of doubles, triples, and home runs. So he's probably about even, maybe actually a little more skewed toward home run power right now. And then, like we always do, we want to take a look, just kind of see what the WOBA and the WRC are saying. They are saying he is doing a very, very good job. That's a really good WRC. I would say that Willie Calhoun is ready for the majors. He's ready to be called up and promoted. But I'm not actually going to call him up right now. So the reason we're not going to call up Willie Calhoun right now is because of the 40-man roster. So the 40-man roster is made up of a collection of players, your active roster, your players on the 10-day DL, minor leaguers that you have used in the majors but have demoted currently or that you plan to use in the future. And in order to call a player up to the majors, you have to add them to this 40-man roster. So if your 40-man roster is full of players that you aren't going to put use at the major league level, then you either have to call one of them up when you have an injury or take someone off the 40-man roster. In order to get a player off the 40-man roster, you have to waive and designate them for assignment. So the waiver means, just like in every sport out there, that any team can claim him and take on his contract. If he clears waivers, then you have to designate him. Then you've designated him for assignment, which means you either trade him, release him, or demote him. Now, if you go over to the roster here, you take a look at these notes down here along the bottom. The two we want to pay attention to right now are the plus sign and the caret. So if you look at Bartolo Colon, Doug Fister, Cole Hamels, Mike Minor, Matt Moore, all five of these guys and some other players, so all five members of my starting rotation have the right to refuse a minor league assignment. That means I cannot demote them without their permission. And in Out of the Park Baseball, I don't think I've ever had a player accept a demotion that had the right to refuse it. So that's one of those options gone. In addition, the other thing you want to pay attention to, we're going to come down here and look at Jurickson Profar. So Profar is out of minor league options. What that means is that if he were to do poorly, I would not be able to just send him to AA or AAA, sorry. I would actually have to designate him for assignment to send him to AAA because he cannot be on the 40-man roster and be at the minor league level. Every player can be on the 40-man roster and not at the major league level for parts of 3 seasons. So the minute we demote Mazzara, that uses one of his remaining option years. He has 3 option years left. We would be able to demote him for 3 years if we wanted to keep him down in the minors. But back to designating players for assignment. So if you can't demote someone because they can refuse a minor league, you have 2 options, trade or release. So if you look at a player like Shin-Soo Choo, who's got a contract of 3 years and $62 million remaining, no GM is probably going to want to take this contract. You're probably not going to be able to trade Shin-Soo Choo. Unless he is absolutely tearing it up, there's probably no way an AI team takes on this contract. You'll probably get the message, I'm not going to accept a trade that involves overpriced veterans. So since he also has the right to refuse a minor league assignment, denoted by that caret, and he is out of minor league options, in order to clear him off the roster, since a team wouldn't probably take his contract in a trade, you'd most likely have to release him and still pay him that $62 million. Because of situations like that, and more importantly, situations where a team could claim someone like Drew Robinson if you wanted to take them off your 40-man roster, you don't want to add a player to the 40-man roster until you need to. So even though Willie Calhoun is ready to play at the major league level, in my opinion, I'm not going to bring him up to the 25-man roster or even to the 40-man roster at this time. However, the minute a position player gets hurt, he's probably going to be the guy I call up. He's clearly ready, and I want to continue his growth and see how he can continue to get better. So the last thing I want to talk about in this episode is the free agent prospect filter. So if you go over to your filter here and set up this filter, it will allow you to find prospects, players who are still young, are still going to get better, and have pretty decent potential. Like this guy's got a 45 potential rating. overall. And if you look at his stuff, his movement, his control, those are all going to be average to above average, plus two above average pitches in the fastball and slider, and a slightly below average changeup. That's a good player to just have in your system and slowly develop. He could turn into something that's pretty solid. Probably won't be like a frontline starter, especially with that lower velocity, but he's still probably going to be a pretty solid option, or he could be a pretty solid option. So we really lose nothing since there's no limit on roster spaces at the minor league level. We're probably not losing anything by actually signing him and offering him that minor league contract. So I've actually already offered him a minor league contract before. I accidentally deleted the footage before I got it added to the video, so I'm just coming back. I've already offered both of these guys contract, but we'll go ahead and clear the filter for a second. And so you would come down here and offer a minor league contract, or you can click in here, come over to actions and offer minor league contract. But I'm not going to offer Devin Watts a minor league contract. Actually, why is he not showing? Oh, because he's too old to show up in there. I am actually going to offer him a minor league contract. Because he looks like he might have some potential to grow, and so is Ricky Eusebio. Okay. I'm not used to these guys actually being in here, but you can kind of look at all these guys that don't have a demand, and they're going to usually be players who have not made it up to the major league level and haven't lived to their potential. If you look at someone like Anduria Acevedo, he's actually 27, so he's probably never going to hit this 45 if he hasn't already. So we don't necessarily want to put him in the minor league. Same with Alex Balog at 25. Really, 24. Ricky Eusebio is pretty late for that. So it looks like it doesn't have him actually as a pending contract, so I'm not too terribly sad about that. You look at someone like Adam Lind, like we all know Adam Lind's a major league player, but he's 34 and he's got a potential overall of 45. If he hasn't reached by the time he's 34, then he's probably never going to reach it. So there's no point in trying to sign him to let him get better. Same with someone like Reed Redman, probably never going to live up to that 45 potential. You want to bring in players like this because it does allow you to add some talent to the roster pretty effectively. You don't have to wait for the draft to add these kind of players. Usually these are players that are drafted and just not renewed by their former teams. So you'll usually find some players that get released. You want to check this filter. Let's go ahead and do a filter on. You want to probably check this every couple of weeks, the very latest. Okay, guys, that is the last thing we are going to do in this episode. Next episode, we are going to try to take a look at some pitching prospects. You see here, Hans Cruz and Cole Reagans actually don't have enough innings to really look at them appropriately, actually value what they've done. So I'll find a pitcher or two that we can look at, see if they need to be promoted, demoted, or if they need to stay where they are. Again, I apologize for the length of the last episode. I'm going to try and keep them somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes going forward. If you like what you've seen so far, don't forget to like and subscribe. I do try to get to all my comments, especially the ones that are more than just a couple of words long. Any feedback, positive, negative, constructive, that you guys might have is appreciated. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.